Is anybody bringing rabbit egg sandwiches next Sunday? I just wonder. I was going to bring wabbit stew if somebody was bringing wabbit eggs, but. All right. Let's see. We got special. After this, turn to page 395. Nikki's been wanting to play this for so long. I said, okay, we'll do it tonight. 395. There's a great day coming, a great day coming. There's a great day coming by and by, when the saints and the sinners shall be parted right and left. Are you ready for that day to come? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? There's a bright day coming, a bright day coming. There's a bright day coming by and by, but its brightness shall only come to them that love the Lord. Are you ready for that day to come? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? There's a sad day coming, a sad day coming. There's a sad day coming by and by, when the sinner shall hear his doom depart. I know ye not. Are you ready for that day to come? Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Are you ready? Are you ready for the judgment day? Need to put down a spittoon for him after he clears that thing out. Mercy. We'll have to get some towels over there or something for later on. I don't know. That's a lot of fun. That's a good job. So it's not going to be long till Miss Kathy's going to be joining them. And then they'll probably buy a bus and go on the road. So can't wait for that. If anybody else plays an instrument as well,
feel free to join their little club. I don't think it's exclusive. I think it's, if you have an instrument to play, then play it, right? Because you're not playing it for us, you're playing it for the Lord. But I'm sure there's some kind of pawn shops or something you could probably find that at, right? I didn't know a kazoo cost that much. I can play a kazoo. Or the washboard. Remember that? The old washboards? Who plays the bongos? No, yeah, I could see that. Or not. He may not keep time, right? But it probably get a little bit carried away, getting the spirit on that point, probably, maybe. Ecclesiastes Chapter 12 tonight. Ecclesiastes Chapter 12. I know at least one's excited about this tonight because we're when we read these scriptures, just have Miss Connie in mind when we're reading these scriptures, and that way. Ecclesiastes Chapter 12. We have seen the experiments that Solomon has spent so much time making when he looked at things, and he's probably the only man who ever lived who was able to experiment in all of these different areas, attempting to find a solution to life apart from God. And it didn't take him very long to realize that. And throughout Ecclesiastes, the key expression has been under the sun, and that has always referred to a life apart from God. And a great many people today feel that they will solve their problems if they just get back to nature. They're just going to get back to nature. I know there's this homestead thing that a lot of people seem to be going to, and that's living off grid. So we started watching this little documentary of this called Homestead Rescue. And if there was one television show that encouraged me never to do that, is Homestead Rescue. And looking at all of the stuff that they have to do to live off grid. I don't know about you, but I like electricity. And yeah, you may have to pay a little bit more for it during the summer and during the winter and all of that, but you don't have to rely on batteries. You don't have to rely on solar panels and all these other things. And I like it when you just go to the sink and turn on the faucet and you have water, and then you turn the red one on and you get hot water. I like that as well. And there's nothing wrong with nature. If that's what you want to do, that's great. But I think if you do that apart from God, you're just going to have some issues, regardless of what you do. So there's a great exodus out of the cities all over this country into the suburbs, beyond the suburbs, to buy a little cabin by the lake, and that's what they do. And like I said, it didn't solve Solomon's problems, and it's not going to solve anybody else's problems to get away from society. It may help you mentally. Neto was telling us a little bit about New York City. He was there this past week and doesn't ever want to go back. I don't blame him. I've been there several times myself. There was nothing there that's alluring to me. 28,000 million people live inside New York, and they're wall to wall. And since they can't grow out, they grow up. And so they build all these high-rise towers and things like that. So Solomon tried wisdom and philosophy. We looked at pleasure, materialism, experimented with fatalism. He tried living life for himself, turned to religion, found ritual but no reality. Then he tried to find the answer in wealth. And finally, Solomon tried the good life, the life of a moralist, which he found to be an insipid sort of existence, or a tasteless sort of existence. And I think that's why maybe a lot of people, young people today, especially, rebel against it. And Josh was asking me before the service, he had the bulletin and the cartoon in the bulletin. And if you saw that on the prayer list, it had to do with this little girl asking her grandma that if her life before color was in black and white. And Josh said, You do realize that most young people today don't even get that. And my comment was, well, they don't normally read bulletins anyway. It's for older people, and older people are going to understand that. And so I don't know what a bulletin would look like if we geared that to the youth. It would have to be all pictures, I guess, something like that. But, you know, yes, they have to be on their phone. And we could do that. We could send them a digital bulletin, I guess, and that way they can read that, while I'm up here preaching. But anyway, you can't really see that happen. So Solomon now comes to the final conclusion of the matter in chapter 12. And this chapter, I just want you to understand, this chapter is going to have something for the young person as well as the old person. So it's going to be kind of both. So both ends of the spectrum of life will meet here in chapter 12. So let's look at verse number 1, and let's kind of close this out tonight. Verse number 1, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1. Remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in them. So in view of the fact that nothing under the sun can satisfy the human heart, God ends this conclusion of this, and he basically says, you just need to get back to God. Everything that you've tried and you found to be empty, you found to be bubbles, all of that life without God, it's not going to amount to anything. It's not going to work, so just go back to God. And that's what Solomon is trying to tell us today. So young people, this is kind of for you, this first stage, and then we'll get back to it at the end. Young people, especially while you're young, make your decision to follow God now. Don't wait, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to follow God. Where if you just make a decision early in your life, I'm not going to follow the world, I'm not going to follow the trends of the world, I'm not going to follow society, I'm going to follow God. I'll tell you, when you get to the end of your journey, there won't be anything that you will regret doing as long as you do things for God. And it's going to be obvious why this should be done. So Solomon really is going to paint a picture, kind of these verses, verse 1 really sets the tone for the remainder of the chapter. And so Solomon now starts to paint a picture of old age, and it's not a pretty picture. Can I just say that right? It's just not going to be a pretty picture. And this is what I'm talking about. Notice verse number 2. He says, while the sun or the light or the moon or the stars be not darkened, nor the clouds return after the rain. So is he saying here that the sun and the moon and the stars and the lights are going to go out? No, he doesn't. That's not what he's talking about here. He means that you don't see them like you used to see them. This is kind of what he's talking about. Time flies. There's no question about that. And one sad experience follows another. And that's what he's talking about when he says the clouds return after the rain. I don't know about you, but after a rain, I like the clouds to go away. I like the sun to come out. I like the sun to dry everything up. But according to Solomon here, after a rainstorm, the clouds come back, or they just stay there. So when you get old, you can go out and have a great day, but believe me, it takes 3 or 4 days to get over that. I can remember driving for hours, and when I was in Bible college, I was in Springfield, Missouri for Bible college. We lived in Connersville, Indiana. That's where both of our parents were. And so we had two little kids at that time, Jared and Tia. So the best thing for us to do is when I got off work on Friday, we would just jump in the car and I'd drive 9 hours to Connersville, and the kids would sleep in the back, and I could just stay up all night and drive, and then maybe I could get to my parents' house or her parents' house, and I could sleep for a couple hours. Man, I was good to go the rest of the day. If I drive all night now, I'm in the hospital getting morphine or something. So this is kind of what he's talking about. And then Solomon really gets into more specifics here. Notice verse number 3. He says, in the day when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors, verse 4, shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and he shall rise up at the voice of the bird, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. All right, we need to take these two verses right here and kind of break them down to help us to decipher what he's talking about by using these terms. So this is kind of a humorous description of the body in old age. And if you're there, then you know exactly what we're talking about. In verse 3, when it talks about the keepers of the house shall tremble, well, that's talking about the arms and the legs. Strengthen the arms and the legs are not what they used to be. I can remember my brother when he helped me with the house in Carthage. He was a little younger than I am now when we started this. My older brother's 11 years older than I am. And we got to tearing stuff out and putting stuff back in and all of that. And I remember him telling me one day, we had stopped for lunch and he was doing this with his hands and he said, I just don't have the strength in my hands anymore. And I thought, man, that's got to be tough. You just might as well die if you get to that point where you can't use your hands. And then we're working on this house over here after we bought it, and I was telling her, I just don't have the strength in my hands anymore. And then my legs get weak and they get wobbly, especially if you miss a meal and you're not drinking the proper water and all of that. So he's really talking about the arms and the legs, and the strength in the arms and the legs, just not what they used to be. And then he goes on in verse number 3 and he says, the strong men shall bow themselves. Have you watched a person when they get up, especially if they have back problems, they don't stand up straight right away. They're just kind of bent over. And I've kind of noticed the older I get, I'd get up, maybe I'd pulled my back or something, but after a few minutes I'm standing up straight. Now I'm noticing when I get out of bed, I walk this way to the couch, and it's just that posture is starting to wane. It's not, you can't stand up as good, you can't stretch your legs out like you used to. Once they were strong, and now not so much. And then he goes to this, verse 3, he says, the grinders cease because they are few. He's talking about a loss or worn down teeth. That's what he's talking about here. And if you've lost all of your teeth, if you have a set of plastic teeth, then you know what we're talking about. And especially dentures, where it covers the entire roof of your mouth, it covers the bottom part of your mouth. There goes your taste. You can't taste anything unless you gum it, I guess. Take these things out if you don't have any teeth. And then there's some that's missing part of their teeth. You just have partials. It's the same thing. Food gets underneath that. Man, that's an aggravation. So I've lost a lot of my teeth because I've chewed ice all my life. And the first time I had to go to the dentist, get an extraction, my dentist got all over me. Stop chewing ice. Well, some people say that there's a mental condition if you chew ice all the time, and it's evident that I have some kind of mental problem. But I've lost all my teeth, so I had to get a partial made. And it covered the whole entire roof of my mouth. And yeah, it's a lot easier to chew a steak with that, but you couldn't taste the steak, number one, because it covered the palate of your mouth. And then after you were done, man, I didn't realize how much of that food stays in there. And that's not very pleasant. I mean, you wake up the next morning, it's like, oh, where did that come from? And come to find out it was that steak that you ate the night before. So the grinders cease because they are few. And it's not that old people lose their appetite when they lose their teeth. They either just can't chew it or they can't taste it anymore. So why spend the money to get something that you like to eat if you can't taste it? He goes on, verse 3. He says, those that look out the windows be darkened. Now, can anybody tell me what that's talking about? Talking about your eyesight, how it gets dim. Remember this morning we were talking about Eli, and he couldn't see anything because his eyesight was going dim. It was just things that he could not see. Those that look out the windows be darkened. So it's either cataracts or it's blindness, and you just can't see like you used to. Or you get to that point where you have to start wearing readers. And then after you wear readers a while, they become your regular glasses because your eyes just get worse and worse and worse. Those that look out the windows be darkened. In verse 4, he says, the doors shall be shut in the street. the door shall be shut in the street. That's just referring to hearing loss. It's difficult to hear somebody when the door is closed. And this is kind of what he's talking about. The enjoyment of music fades with the hearing because you can't hear anymore. You can't hear the birds anymore. And I'm to the point, and Kathy's been, she's been on me for months and months and months to go have my ears checked. But I think I'm not there yet. I don't need hearing aids. I can hear things just fine. And she says, you can't even hear what I say because every time I say something, you always say, huh? Well, it's just getting to the point now to where I hear what she says, but it's just a natural, huh? I just kind of speak that out, and so she tells me, no, you're hearing. But what's kind of funny, Brother Josh, is I can sit out in the turkey woods. I can hear that turkey gobble from 5 miles away. And Kathy says, well, you just have selective hearing. I said, yep, sometimes I don't select to hear you. So I don't know whether that's a part of it or not. And those that look out the windows be darkened, the doors shall be shut in the street. And then verse 4 again, he says, the sound of the grinding is low. The sound of the grinding is low. When you get to a certain age, their activity starts to diminish the older that you get. Especially if you have problems with blood circulation, if you have diabetes, it seems like the first thing that gets affected is your feet. And you get neuropathy in your feet, and after a while you stand up on your feet and do anything, your feet start to hurt. And even if you don't have neuropathy, you get old, your feet start to hurt, and then your legs start to hurt, and then your joints start to hurt, and your knees hurt, everything hurts about you. So, yeah, this is kind of what he's talking about here. He's kind of describing getting old. Just, the hearing goes away. Your enjoyment of music, you can't hear the birds sing anymore. The sound of the grinding is you just can't do what you used to do. And then verse number 7, I've noticed this about older people too, is he shall rise up at the voice of a bird. That doesn't mean he wakes up to the sound of a bird. He's just a light sleeper. I mean, I've known people that, can go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock, and they're up at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. That's as far as they can sleep, And so, hey, I'm with you on that. If I go past midnight or something, I'm out till about 8 o'clock or something. There's some people that just wake up early. And then he says, the last part of verse 4, it says, and all the daughters of music shall be brought low. There's just that loss of enjoyment, loss of ability, the things that you used to do when you were a kid, and now you're older and you just don't enjoy life like you used to. He goes on to verse 5. And it says, also when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way, and the almond tree shall flourish, and the grasshopper shall be a burden, and desire shall fail, because man goeth to his long home, and the mourners go about the streets. All right, we got to break this verse down too, see what he's talking about. It says, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fear shall be in the way. This is just talking about physical frailty. You just don't have the balance like you used to. I remember when I had my right knee replaced, I had to go through therapy because they cut all of the muscles and they take some muscles out and all of that. So part of the physical therapy was you had to stand for a certain amount of minutes on the leg that you had the surgery on. And so I couldn't do it. I couldn't balance. And so when I would go to physical therapy, and they would have me do this, they'd say, okay, I want you to stand on your right leg, pull your left leg up, and I want you to balance. Well, what I got to do was I was kind of next to the table, and so what I would do is I just kind of lean into the table. So what was I doing? I was cheating because I wanted to pass the course. And just like right now, it's hard for me to balance on that. My ankle's doing this because I don't have the muscles in there that I used to have, to keep me balanced. Plus, I'm just getting older. And so I just kind of have that leg up and I'd kind of hold on to something so I wouldn't fall. So, especially, like in the mornings or in the evenings when I'm trying to take my socks off, I have to physically hold on to a wall because I can't hold my balance. And this is just what he's talking about. So really it has nothing to do with surgery. It just has everything to do with I'm getting old. Yeah. You watch where you walk for fear of breaking a hip. I don't know whether you've ever watched me going down these steps, but I try to wait till everybody's kind of turned away or during prayer. And I'm usually holding on to here, or if I'm not holding on to here because I think somebody's not closing their eyes when they pray, I just walk very carefully down these steps because I know that eventually I'm going to do a face plant right in those chairs. And I'm glad we don't have the pews anymore because I'd face plant in the pew. These are a little bit softer. That's going to help me when I do a face plant. But when I'm walking in the woods, we've got vines, and those vines get on, you get your shoe underneath that vine. And I mean to tell you, you wouldn't believe the rock and roll dance I've done a few times in the timber. And there's been a few times where I couldn't catch myself when I just do a header right there. And now I've got face full of dirt and mud and all this other stuff. And then, it doesn't matter. You can be in the woods all by yourself, Brother Teddy, but you still stop and look around, see if there's somebody that's watched you. So this is just what he's talking about. This kind of stuff happens, that loss of balance, when they shall be afraid of that which is high, and fears shall be in the way. And then I got to look at this. I had to look this one up. It says the almond tree shall flourish. I thought, what almond tree shall flourish? I said, yeah, I was talking about the gray head. Having gray hairs. Well, I started this process when I was 18. Pam, my first wife, said, you got a gray hair. And if you've ever seen my wedding picture, I had a full head of hair, and it was dark brown, and I mean it was wavy, and it was a little longer than what it should be, and I had sideburns all the way. I couldn't even grow sideburns. I had fake sideburns all the way down to here, man. And then she said, you're starting to get gray hair, and then she started pulling them out, and I've heard once you pull one, they multiply by a dozen. So it wasn't long until I was getting more and more and more gray. But I'm not vain like some people and have to cover it. It says the grasshopper shall be a burden. Well, a grasshopper is a small and light, yet even it becomes a burden to the age. It's kind of just a metaphor for loss of strength and vitality. And it shows that even the lightest tasks or pleasures are now tiring. For my birthday, I got probably the best birthday present I've ever got in my life. It's about that long, and it's got a little gripper thing, and it's got little things like that on the end. Son, I'm telling you. Now I walk around looking like an old man. I use that as a cane sometimes, but, well, it helps me to pick stuff up without having to bend over. Because you never know, at the wrong moment when you bend over, you pull a muscle in your back. Or you stumble off a curb, or you don't get your foot picked up as you're walking or you're stepping onto a curb, and then you do that real quick dance there again where you're trying to gain your balance, and then you realize, oh man, I pulled a muscle in my back. And then he says the desire shall fail. That just refers to the loss of zest. I remember probably one of the last times I played basketball, I think I was in my mid-40s, and we were doing a 3-on-3 tournament. I played basketball when I was in high school, and thought I was pretty good. I was no Michael Jordan or Larry Bird, but I did my share. I just loved the game. And so it'd been a little while since I played, and when I was youth and music director at Whittier Lane Baptist Church, our church was good size. We had 3-on-3 basketball tournaments, and we had a gymnasium on the property, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to get back in shape. I'm just going to start slam dunking the ball like I've never, been able to slam dunk the ball before. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be fun. So I was kind of the point guard that particular night we were playing, and I got the ball, and the lane just kind of opened up, and I thought, man, here's my chance to drive the lane, do a 360 slam dunk right in the middle of that, and just prove to everybody that I've still got it as a 45-year-old man. And I remember taking off down through there and I was dribbling the ball. Well, all of a sudden the ball kept on dribbling, but I wasn't behind the ball. And then for that split second, my mind told my body, you do that again, fat boy, and you're going to die right here. And I realized that there was just a loss of zest for life. And then it began to realize, man, I'm not 20 years old anymore. So I enjoy walking around the church. I enjoy working around the house. And it just seems like the stuff that I used to be able to do. And there was a time I could get up and I could just go all day. And boy, now I get up. I go to a game. I watch these boys play soccer sometimes. And I'm sitting there in the stands. And I'm so exhausted by the time the game's over that I got to have help getting back to the car. And I didn't do anything but sit there. And so this is just kind of what happens when you get older. You have to stop. You have to take a break. My feet hurt. And there's times when I say, and you can be working right along, and I call it hitting a wall. Do you know what that is? You hit a wall. You just get to the point where you have to stop. You just don't have the energy to do that. And then he goes on, verse 5, he says, because man goeth to his long home. That's what takes place after all the culmination of everything that we've talked about. You're just going to die. Isn't this just an encouraging passage of Scripture here? This is what's going to happen to you before you die. You're going to lose your teeth. Your bones are going to hurt. You're just not going to have that vitality of life that you used to have. So this is what you've got to look forward to. When you start decaying like that, you're going to end up dying. That's what he says, because man goeth to his long home. It says, and the mourners go about the streets. I thought, what is this talking about? The mourners go about, that's just people making funeral decisions. And then, of course, back then they would hire mourners to go to your funeral and just wail and bawl and all that. They used to get paid to do that. I thought, man, if you're needing some money, I guess you could just be a professional mourner. Just go to somebody's funeral and start wailing and moaning. Just, if you do that, make sure you're at the right funeral. Just, the mourners go about this. Verse 6. Or ever the silver cord be loosed, or the golden bowl be broken, or the pitcher be broken at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. So these are just vivid images that describe the irreversible breakdown of the body at death. And it's a poetic and respectful reflection on human mortality. The silver cord be loosed, that has to deal somehow with the spinal cord, because that's what feeds your body. The golden bowl is broken. That just speaks of the head. The mind gets fragile. My mom she'll be 98 this year. She'll be 98 in August. She's been in a nursing home for the last 6 years. And we notice now, I just talked to my brother the other day and I was asking him about her, and he said, well, she's doing well physically. She gets up and goes to the dining room and eats and all of that. He said, but her mental capacity is gone. She can't remember anything that was recent. Now, if we were to go there and visit her, she would remember everything I did when I was a kid growing up. And I guess evidently I just made that kind of an impact where she'll never ever forget that, the things that I have done. Pitcher broken at the fountain. That's just a failure of the vital organs that take place. The wheel broken at the cistern. That just suggests that the machinery of the body is ceasing to draw life from its source. Eventually, we fade away to nothing. I mean, if you live for a long time, if you live to be in your 90s, you can't do the stuff that you used to do even when you were 70. That's just the process of life. And I'll tell you why that happens. Sin. That's why we die. We were not created to go through this. We were not created to die. We were created to live forever. And that's why the body fights death so hard. It's got to be pretty serious for you to be killed in an accident. It's got to that body has to go through a lot of turmoil for that life to cease Because our body was designed to fight death, and it does. And I've watched people fight to the very last breath they could take. And that's all because of this thing called sin. And then verse 7, he kind of culminates that and says, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was. But notice this, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. There is this, if there's any verse out there that deflects this thing called soul sleep, it's right here. Well, how is that? Well, then shall the dust return to the earth as it was, because dust, you're made of dust and you're going to return to dust. But it says, and the spirit shall return unto God who gave it. So people who use this verse to suggest that they don't read the last part of the verse. Even Paul said this, 2 Corinthians chapter 5, in verse 8, it says, we are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. And so that's Bible, that's Scripture. So when at the moment of death, when we close our eyes and we open our eyes again, we're in the presence of Almighty God. That's just Bible. That's just Scripture. But then notice verse 8. It says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, all is vanity. I like one of the preachers, I can't remember who it was, but the preacher that said, you know what vanity is? Nothing but bubbles. And isn't that the truth? Everything is just bubbles. Our life is just bubbles. And young people here tonight, life will remain empty if you are just living for the here and now. Because eventually you'll reach that age that we're talking about right here. Verse 9, he says, moreover, because the preacher was wise, he still taught the people knowledge, yea, he gave good heed and sought out and set in order many proverbs. The preacher sought to find out acceptable works, and that which was that which was written was upright, even the words of truth. He says in verse 11, the words of the wise are as goads, and as nails fastened by the masters of assemblies, which are given from one shepherd. So no one should really despise the wisdom of people that give wisdom. Those that are older can give good wisdom of things that happened in the past, and we do that so maybe they won't follow the same path that we did and get in trouble. And there's a lot to be learned when you're young. Hello? Don't shut me off yet. We're not done. There's a lot to learn when you're young. And you can learn from those that have some wisdom. So don't ever get to the place to where you think you know it all. It's just not going to work, because you don't. You know, I became a diver, scuba diver, when I first passed my open water stop. And, I can remember, my instructor telling me, he says, Kent, now that you're certified, he said, well, we can't personally make you a better diver. He said, but what we can do is we can give you the tools to become a better diver. And that is so true. So the education with me, even though I'm an instructor, my education still continues. I want to learn more about this because it's all about safety, and I want to instill in the students that I have safety measures. Yeah, it's a very dangerous sport. I mean, you can die, and people say, well, I'm never going to become a scuba diver. You can die when you're out playing golf. If you can just imagine getting hit by a golf ball right in your temple, I mean, you're pretty much done, because that ball's flying like 9,000 miles an hour. Verse number 12, he says, and further by these, my son, be admonished of making many books. There is no end, and much study is a weariness of the flesh. I think what Solomon is saying here is education is not going to solve the problems of life, but it can be a tool to help you get past that, to help you learn. Does it bring weariness? Absolutely it does. And I've said this, and I believe this. The mind will absorb what the seat can endure. What do you think we have padded chairs to sit on? So you can endure just a little bit more of this. And then notice verse 13. We're almost done. He said, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Solomon ends this book up by saying, here's the conclusion, here's the last part, here's the ending. And he only gives us two things. Number one, fear God. And we've talked about what fearing God is. It's not expecting or waiting on God to take a big stick from heaven and beat us over the head every time that we do things. No, I think what Solomon has talked about, even in Proverbs, is about wisdom and understanding and knowledge, using that as a tool. And that tool is to help us have a better relationship with the Lord. So that phileo fear that he's talking about brings about three things, and we've talked about this before. But it brings about, number one, a reverence of who God is. Now, my generation of people and my parents' generation of people knew and understood what it meant to reverence God, because God deserves to be revered. And it brings about a reverence of who God is, His holiness. God is not the big man upstairs. He is not. He is God. And He is God Almighty, and He is holy and righteous, and should be treated with that respect. We see young people today, they have absolutely no respect. They don't have respect for their elders. How are they going to have respect for God? I think there's been a total communication. There's been a breakdown of parents in teaching their kids this thing called respect. If my mom and dad, if I was going someplace with my mom, if I didn't go to the door and open the door for her, you know what I'd get? I'd get thumped in the back of the head. What are you doing? And so today, when I go to a store, of course, a lot of doors now open by themselves, but there are some doors old-fashioned you have to open up. If I've got somebody behind me, if I've got a lady behind me, it doesn't matter if she's young or if she's old, I'm going to hold that door open for respect. And I've heard older ladies say, wow, you just don't see that anymore. And I said, well, ma'am, let me just, I'll just explain why I do what I do. My mom is, at that time, 95, 96, whatever she was at that that time that we were talking about. I said, but my mom is watching me this very moment. And if she sees me walking in and not open the door for you, the next time I see her, she's going to thump me. That's respect. And respecting the elders. And we just don't see that really that much. I think in churches you still see it, because they hear that from the pulpit, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But there's nothing wrong with respecting one another. And that's something that and so if we don't respect each other, how are we going to respect God? How is there going to be a reverence for who God is? Jesse Duplantis made this statement several years ago. He said, when I study for a message, just me and God, we just get along, we just kind of walk side by side, and God, we just kind of talk to each other kind of like we're brothers. No, that is the most disrespectful thing you can say, because we're not brothers. He's my Father. And He should be respected that way. And besides, every time in the Old Testament that I read that somebody, even with an angel, they fell down prostrate on their faces, they were dead because of who God is. That's who God is. And I think once that reverence is there, I think that at number two, it instills in us a desire to serve Him. I want to serve God. Kind of like I wanted to serve my parents. I wanted to help my parents. I wanted to do what my parents wanted me to do, because I wanted them to thank me for the stuff that I was doing. Well, there's something else we don't hear that much anymore, is appreciation for what people do. Well, that's just what they're supposed to do. Well, it doesn't hurt just kind of patting them on the back saying, great job. And thirdly, I think it just installs in us a desire not to offend God. That's what respect brings about. I don't want to do the things that's going to offend my God. And then the second thing he says, just keep His commandments. That is the whole duty of mankind. That is our job description. When you go and you get a job at different places, they'll give you, this is your job description. This is what I want you to do. And I've always taught my kids, do more than what's black and white. Do more than what's on your job description. If you don't have a job description to clean the toilets, go clean the toilets anyway. That's just going to help you, rise up through the ranks. And so here is our job description of the child of God. Fear God and do His commandments. Why? Well, he finishes up with verse 14. He said, for God shall bring every work into judgment, and with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. What is he talking about? In the end, God will ultimately judge every action. even the hidden ones. So we need to choose wisely, right? Well, I don't want to end it on verse 14. I want to go back up to verse 1 for just a couple more minutes. Verse 1, he says, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth, while the evil days come not, nor the years draw nigh, when thou shalt say, I have no pleasure in that. Why are we really talking about the young people? I think there's two reasons. Number one, for a very definite reason, simply because the matter of salvation, your chances of being saved are greater the older you get. You know, when we have Bible school and things like that, we see a higher number of young people come to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ than we do adults. That's just a fact of life. That's just the way it is. So young people, a young person has a better opportunity to trust Jesus Christ as their personal Savior as an older person does. You've been there if you've tried to witness to people. You know what I'm talking about. And the second reason is why Solomon makes a special appeal to young people is that they have a lifetime to offer to God in service for Him. God, I want to do what you want me to do. And believe me on this, it seems like yesterday that I was in my 20s. Yesterday. Now I'm 67. I can't believe how quick I got here. I just can't. And James was right when he penned a scripture in James chapter 4. He said, go to now ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain, whereas ye know what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It's even a vapor that appeareth for a little time and then vanisheth away. And that is us. We had one of the grandkids over last night for s'mores, and just kind of sitting around the fire there, and Chloe came over and we had s'mores and all that. I'm sitting in that chair and I'm thinking, here she's what, 15, 16. And I remember when I was 15 and 16. But from the time I was 15 and 16 until I was 67, just a blur. I mean, here I am sitting in that chair and thinking, if I sit wrong, my back's going to hurt for days. If I just sit wrong, if I step off a curb wrong, my back's going to hurt. I'm going to twist an ankle. I'm going to twist a knee or something. And I'm looking at her, and she's kind of spinning around there, and she's doing all of this and doing all of that. And then she kind of squats down there next to the fire to put her marshmallow, and I'm thinking, Lord have mercy, if I ever got down there, I'd never get up. And how did I get there? Time and chance happen to everybody. So when Solomon says, remember the days of thy Creator, think what Solomon says as young people, while you're at the age you're at, serve God with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your strength, all of your might. Because the days will come when you can't. You remember when Peter was talking about John and he was asking Jesus, well, what's he going to do? You remember what Jesus told him? Hey, what he does is none of your business. He said, there's going to be a day when you get to the point physically where you can't get to where you're wanting to go by yourself, and other people take you places you don't want to go. And sometimes we reach that golden age, and I don't know about you, but I've got regrets. Things that I wish I'd have served. I wish I'd have got saved younger. I wish I'd have served God earlier in my life. Those are regrets that I have. Where young people, you don't have any regrets right now. So today, serve. Well, preacher, I'm 70 years old. What do I do? Well, there's two really good times to plant a shade tree. One was 25 years ago. The next time is today. Start serving God today. Because you'll never regret serving God. Never. And for young people, start early. Serve God. Remember God. And do what He wants you to do. Let's all